Have you ever had a student that was supposed to be free or reduced, but for whatever reason they were served as full pay and you needed to change it? If you already use Meals Plus Point of Sale, you know this is easily done with reprocessed transactions. Reprocessed transactions reverse out the original transaction with a negative undo and re-enters the transaction under the student's new status with a positive redo transaction. It also applies a credit for any accumulated charges under the old status. Here we will show you how easy it is to use, but first, a little bit about reprocessed transactions. In order for the transaction to be approved, the student must have a current application on file in Meals Plus Student Eligibility or Free and Reduced. Reprocessed transactions apply to breakfast and lunch meals with the reimbursable Nutrition Code 1 only. Both the negative undo and positive redo transactions will have an effective date of today, regardless of when the original transaction occurred. For this reason, you need to wait until after both breakfast and lunch are served, and the daily deposit must be unclosed before reprocessing transactions. The item ID, site, primary site, and reimbursement site will stay the same as the original transaction. The user decides which meals will qualify for a different status. Reprocessing adjusts the student's account balance for the amount of time of the meal price, and adjustments are based on the student's current status at the time of reprocessing. If a student has transferred, reprocessing is based on the transaction history, so the reversing entries will go to the site where the original meal was served. And finally, this feature should be used with care. It is only intended for correcting meal transactions that were entered with an incorrect status, not for general daily use. Now let's see how easy it is to reprocess a transaction. To begin at your home page of Meals Plus Point of Sale, click on Utilities and Reprocess Transactions. Click on Site to choose the appropriate site, and you'll see that the reprocess screen has two grids. The upper grid has all of the students with a free or reduced application on file and a status of 2, 3, or 4 for the selected site. The site is the site the student is currently assigned to. Status date is the date the status change was originally processed. It is shown for reference only, and there are no restrictions on which transactions can be reprocessed. For example, if an application was not processed until December 11th, but was actually received on December 7th, you might choose to reprocess the transactions after December 7th. Just be sure you can document your reasonings for reprocessing. When you highlight a student in the upper grid, their information shows on the lower grid. The lower grid shows reimbursable meals, again, breakfast or lunch, and Nutrition Code 1 only, where the status is different from their current status. The oldest transactions are on top. The date range defaults to the past month, but can go back to the beginning of the school year. The charges made, prepaid used, and cash columns show how they paid for their original meal. They are calculated from the payment row for the entire transaction, but only include the part of the payment row that is associated with the reimbursable meal. For example, if they charge $2 for a meal and $1 for a supplemental item, it will only show the $2 charge. For mixed transactions, it calculates charges first, then prepaid used, then cash. The bottom grid does not show transactions that have already been reprocessed unless the status changes again. Then the modified transactions will show. Now to reprocess your transaction, simply check the box for the transactions you wish to process and click Reprocess. And that's it. The History button in the Reprocess screen shows the reprocessed transactions for the selected student. In Transaction History, you may see up to 4 transactions for one reprocessed meal. Here you see it reversed the original meal by adding a new purchase row with a negative quantity and price. Undo is at the beginning of the item description. It will write a new payment row to adjust the account balance by the amount of the reversal if necessary. Then it enters a meal transaction at the new status. Redo is at the beginning of the item description. It will also adjust the balance with the payment row if necessary. And now you know how to successfully reprocess a transaction. But how will reprocessing affect your meal summaries and daily deposit reports? First, all of your entries will be picked on today's daily deposit for the site where the original meal was served. Reprocessed transactions will show on the meal summary for the user that ran the reprocess. And just a helpful suggestion, do the reprocessing under a username, such as a manager, that does not usually serve in point of sale. That way you can print a separate meal summary for reprocessed transactions. And you can also use transactions by date to get a report. The reversal or undo entries may cause negative meal counts on the meal summary or daily deposit, but the new transactions or redos will show up as positive, offsetting meal count, so the overall meal count should be the same. On the daily deposit, the sales amounts on the first page will be affected, but there will be offsetting accrual entries on the second page, so the total receipts should stay the same. And that's how simple it is to reprocess a transaction in Meals Plus point of sale. If you have any questions, contact the Meals Plus support staff today at 1-800-541-8999 or visit us at mealsplus.com. Reprocess transactions for Meals Plus. Just one more way we're keeping the lunch line moving.